If I were visiting your city or town, could you recommend a great restaurant to me in English? Hi, welcome back to the More Fluent English podcast video edition on YouTube. Let me share my screen with you. This is episode 47 of the More Fluent English podcast. And let's see. We're going to read through the transcript. Here we are. So I'm going to read through the transcript, and as I go, I'll stop and explain some things in more detail, or show some pictures or maps or just extra materials to help you really understand. So here we go. Bienvenido a mi podcast para ayudar a los emprendedores a mejorar su fluidez con el inglés. Me llamo Joy de More Fluent English y quiero ayudarte a mejorar tu inglés para crecer tu negocio. A ver. Ok. Hay una transcripción y este es el video de YouTube. Ok. Y también quiero decirte que hemos cambiado un poco el programa de communicators que tenemos y voy a abrir las puertas en febrero. Entonces, si quieres más información, puedes visitar morefluentenglish.com. Ahora sigamos con el episodio en inglés. So, as you may know, today's episode is part of a series of podcasts from my self-assessment workbook called 30 Topics to Gauge Your Fluency and Practice Your Use of English in Conversation. This is a great resource to get you to think about what topics you can talk about in English. You can download the workbook for free at my website, morefluentenglish.com. Each of the topics in the workbook is or will be its own podcast episode, and the ones toward the end especially are going to have these videos that you're watching. So if you like this one, look for the others as well. Okay, this is topic 24 that says, recommend a restaurant to me. This is a useful activity to think about for several reasons. First, it's pretty common to suggest something to another person, so practicing vocabulary to be able to express your opinion is good. Also, this is for the entrepreneurs and marketers, essentially what you're doing when you make a recommendation is selling. So it's important to think about how to talk about the features and benefits of something. Okay, let's talk about the topic of restaurants first, and then maybe we can expand to other fields. If I were visiting you in your country or city, what restaurant would you recommend to me and why? First thing you probably think about is the food. Of course, you can say, the food is so good, but that's probably obvious. You probably wouldn't be suggesting a restaurant if you didn't like the food, right? You should be able to say what kind of food they serve. Is it traditional food that represents where you're from? Is it a certain type of cuisine? For example, here in my town, we have a great Italian restaurant, but we also have a couple Chinese restaurants. Let me give you a little look into that. So this is my town. And this right here is the Italian restaurant that I was talking about. You can see it's pretty elegant looking. It's a little bit more upscale, which does mean it's a little bit more expensive, but it's nice to go to, maybe to celebrate a special event or on a special date. It's called Mio Sueño, which I'm pretty sure means mi sueño in Spanish. Yeah, okay. But also, close that. We have this bigger. We have a few, like I said, a couple of Chinese restaurants. Here's one right here, China Walk. And the other one, it's right here. I don't know if it'll come up here. Actually, it's not even showing up. well, it's called Panda. But anyway, oh wait, no, it's over here. Okay, here it is. Panda Kitchen. Panda 2. I guess there was another one at some point. And this is the second one. Anyway, too much. We also actually have quite a few Mexican restaurants in my town. You see here is a Mexican store. There is, well, Taco Bell, but that's not really Mexican now, is it? Oh, actually next to Panda. This map is not updated because there is a new Mexican restaurant right here that's very good. And I can't remember the name of it right now. But if I were recommending it to you, I would tell you where it is and tell you to go there. And there is Two Amigos right here. Make this a little small. And then we have this is a Japanese restaurant. It's called Toke. Well, we call it Toke. I don't know if that's really how you say it. But it's very good also. And then there is a new right here Mexican restaurant called El Patron. So anyway, that's gives you a little bit of insight into my little town. Let's go back to the transcript. Okay. So we're talking about the restaurants. What about the atmosphere of the restaurant? And of course, I mean atmosphere like the ambiance, right? Not the literal air. The personality, maybe. Some restaurants are pretty fancy. And so fancy, I have defined here for you. It has a couple of meanings depending on the meaning you want to convey. So it can mean expensive, high quality, or it can really just sort of mean elaborate. When you're talking about a restaurant, really it could encompass all of that. So some restaurants are pretty fancy while others are more relaxed. Sometimes we talk about the vibe of a place. For example, is it elegant or does it have an informal and fun vibe? Note that the word vibe is kind of informal, so I wouldn't necessarily use it if I were speaking to a business associate who's visiting from out of town, but I would use it to describe the atmosphere or ambiance of a place to a friend or like a close colleague. Okay, like it has a really fun vibe, or and usually the word vibe, since it is informal, it describes usually something that's kind of more fun and informal. I wouldn't probably say it has a fancy vibe, although I could use it that way. When talking about the atmosphere, you can also describe the size of the restaurant, the seating arrangements, and the decor. Another thing to consider when recommending a restaurant is availability. Are reservations needed? Is it usually crowded? Is there typically a long wait? Also, what is the service like? Does the food take a long time? Are the waiters and waitresses friendly? Are they attentive? Here in the US, it's typical for the waiter or waitress, or server, as we call them, to come check on the table pretty often to see if anyone needs another drink or anything. They will also present the check when everyone's finished eating, if not before. You rarely have to ask for it. Usually your server will take your payment, but some places still check you out at the front of the restaurant. So if you're unsure, you can just ask, "Can I pay you?" And your server will tell you what to do. You might mention the location of the restaurant and how to get there and or the parking if you would go by car. Some places have a parking lot, but others might not, especially in a city. You may have to find street parking or a nearby lot. Finally, another thing to consider is price. You wouldn't want to recommend an expensive 5-star restaurant to someone on a fast food budget. You could say something like, X restaurant is a bit pricey, but a more affordable option is Z restaurant. Or X restaurant is expensive, but it's worth it. So let me tell you about a restaurant I went to for the first time this past weekend. We went out of town with some friends, and I had heard people talk about this restaurant, so I wanted to try it. I really liked it. It's called the Wildflower Cafe. It's a quirky little place. Quirky meaning like unconventional. They have paintings for sale on the walls and eclectic accessories in a little shop as you walk in. They sometimes have live music, but when we were there, they didn't. There were a lot of people there, and even though we had a reservation, we still had to wait like 15 minutes, but it was okay. The place is small and has tables set up around corners and in little alcoves, like you see here, like a little corners. But our table didn't feel crowded. And I'm kind of glad they didn't have the music that night though, because our table was right next to where they would have been playing. Our waitress was super nice and answered all of our questions about the menu. The best part was that the food was delicious. Everyone at our table enjoyed their food. And the portions were pretty big. I even had enough left over to bring home and eat it for lunch the next day. Doing that makes the price more affordable, even though it wasn't too expensive anyway. I'm going to read you one of the reviews left by a customer on Google so you can hear some of the informal vocabulary people use. It says, I actually am going to show you right here. And we'll go through a couple of them. This was the first one that is in the transcript. She says, food was delish. Didn't try the famous tomato pie because I hate tomatoes, but what I did have was so good. Such a cool little dive in Mentone. I got the nachos as an appetizer, and it was unusual, but so much better than typical nachos. I had the chicken ranch wrap and chips for my meal. Service was pretty good too, especially since they were super packed. It is a small place and was a long wait time, but well worth it. We will definitely go back. Okay, first, let me show you on the map. So here's my town, and this place that we went to is called Mentone. So here's my town, and this is Mentone. So it's about an hour and a half drive, maybe, well, yeah, it was about an hour and a half. And this, it's just a cute little town, sort of tucked in the mountains. And we just went away for the weekend with some friends, and I had heard about this restaurant. So let's go to the transcript to talk about her review. She used a bit of slang in her review. Let me talk about some of it. She said delish, which is a shortened form of delicious, used very informally. She also used the word dive to describe the restaurant. Such a cool little dive, she said. Dive is usually a word that describes a small, out-of-the-way place, and it can have a negative connotation, although I've been hearing it more lately the way she used it, as someplace cool. She also said the place was packed, meaning that it was crowded or packed full of people. Let's look at a few other reviews. So this one, this person had dinner. She said, this is an eclectic little place tucked under a canopy of trees surrounded by beds of flowers that were entering into their slumber. So she's a bit more poetic in her review. Flowers entering into their slumber. So she was there in the fall going into winter. So it's called Wildflower Cafe, and they usually do have a lot of flowers out front. When I was there last weekend, of course they didn't because it's winter here. There was a young guy singing karaoke style songs, but not in a drunken bar singer karaoke style. This guy was great and had a variety, and he nailed every single one, meaning he sang them perfectly. The menu was quite extensive, and we settled on the smothered chicken and the salmon. Both were plated with steamed vegetables, should be steamed veggies, sorry, that's short for vegetables, and mashed potatoes. We were pleased with everything. We ended the meal with the peanut butter pie that was more like cheesecake, and we weren't upset about it. If you only ordered dessert, you would be happy. The service was great, and we thoroughly enjoyed the meal. So that's a great review. She talks first about the atmosphere and then about the food. Let's look at one more. Let's see. Drove 2 hours to experience and was so not disappointed. Very popular for good reason. Recommend getting there before open so as to be seated in the first wave. We chose tomato pie and shrimp and grits bowl. So the tomato pie is like one of their specialties, and they take tomatoes and mix it with some other things and put it into a pie crust. And shrimp and grits. Grits is a very popular dish. It's a traditional dish in the southern part of the United States where I live, and I don't really even know how to describe grits. It's sort of, I don't know. I don't even know. If you have a question about grits, leave it in the comments and I will do some research on it. I personally don't eat grits, so I can't really describe it to you. Anyway, they really liked it. She said perfection. By the time we departed, it was a 2-group wait and dinner was completely booked. Again, it's worth it. So dinner was completely booked, meaning there were no spots available. Parking, once in full swing, it's a bumper car experience. You can park in an open lot across the street and walk back. So, and she then said it was somewhat difficult. So they do a parking lot. It's a little small and kind of haphazard, like she said, a bumper car experience. So anyway, those are some of the reviews. Let's go back to the transcript. Okay, so we're right here. Now you've heard a couple examples of giving a recommendation or review of a restaurant. Usually you recommend something you like, so you're giving your opinion of why it was good. Being able to give your opinion about something is a valuable skill to help you build relationships. To apply it to your business, you need to be able to talk about why customers or clients should buy your product or service, what makes it good, and what makes it the best option to solve their problem. Can you describe that in English? If you'd like to practice talking about this or anything else in English with me, especially to enhance your business, I invite you to check out my program called Communicators. Applications to join will open in February. Learn more about it on our website, morefluentenglish.com or inglesconmasfluidez.com. And you can get all the fluency topics for this podcast series on the website as well. That's the lost my words. The self-evaluation workbook that I talked about at the beginning. And you can download this transcript to study it more if you want to at the website also. All right, thanks for listening. And don't forget, as always, please like, subscribe, send me any questions, comment below, do all the things. And I will see you later. Okay, hasta luego.